Thank you for joining us.
You were at a breakfast that we had a few years ago. I recognize your name from the list.
Yes, yes. I thought you were going to say you recognized the handsome face, but you know, I understand. Yeah. Sometimes I know people want to block it out.
I knew. I knew that you were no kid before.
I'm Dwayne, your line, so whenever you want to get started, feel free. Take your time.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November 2020 Brooklyn Community Board 14 Youth Service Committee meeting. My name is Dwayne Joseph. I am joined tonight by Jonathan Judge, my co-chair. I think you're muted, Jonathan. Yeah, we're not hearing you. I can see you. So joined tonight by my Jonathan, the other handsome gentleman with the beard, and members of our committee and our board as a whole, and a few members of the public. Tonight's meeting, we hope to be very efficient in producing this tonight. So I hope to keep this to about an hour and 15 minutes, if that's okay with everyone. The meeting is being recorded for perpetuity on YouTube. So as one of my fellow co-chairs and board members said last week on her meeting, let's keep the language as polite as possible. So tonight, our agenda has two items. Specifically, we invited the folks from the Department for Youth and Community Development, better known as DYCD, to discuss their Workforce Connect programs. Those programs are things like SYEP, the Summer Youth Employment Program, which a lot of people are familiar with, Work, Learn, and Grow, WLG, and a few others, and I'll let them touch on those. We're also joined tonight by members of the VISTA program from the Mayor's Office to discuss Youth Leadership Councils. As many of you board members know, and members of the public who have been attending our meetings know, we have been working to develop a youth committee that is built or rather youth council that's built and represented by the young people within the district, so that we can, you know, hopefully grow future leaders, future members of the community that are civically engaged and will want to participate in the board and other civic activities as they get older. So with that, I would like to invite Sarah Marks from the Department of Youth and Community Development to speak on the Workforce Connect programs. Sarah?
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Sarah Marks. I am the Director of Intergovernmental Affairs at the Department of Youth and Community Development. I know I've met some of you, but not all of you. I know that, you know, many of you are familiar with our agency, but I'm going to assume just briefly that not everyone is, that you might have some newer members here. So DYCD, if this is your first time working with us, one thing that's important to know about us is that our programs are all operated by a network of community-based organizations. So all of the programs that I'm going to talk about today are supervised by sort of our central office and designed by DYCD, but at the same time, they are delivered by organizations in your neighborhood that either operate locally or citywide. So that's just sort of one thing to keep in mind that's a little bit different about DYCD than other agencies. And all of our programs are delivered. We award through the contract process, so that means that we evaluate all of the providers in terms of their experience in the community, their experience delivering this type of service, and and the way that they're graded in an impartial way to make sure that we pick the organizations that are best able to deliver these services. So you may hear of us more frequently on our youth services side, which we operate the after-school programs and community centers, Compass program, Sonic, Cornerstone, and Beacon. We also offer adult programs, specifically adult literacy, and some other neighborhood level initiatives. And tonight I'm here to talk about the workforce development side of our agency, which is known as Workforce Connect, which is sort of the umbrella term for all of our workforce organizations. So DYCD is charged with workforce development for young people, and that's generally up to age 24. Different programs have different age ranges, but when I talk about youth here, we're basically talking about anywhere from age 14 to 24, depending on the program. And there's a little bit of, you'll know there's a little bit of overlap, right? Because at 18, you are considered an adult. So anyone over 18 also has the opportunity to work with small business services at the Workforce One centers and other programs. So I'm here just to talk about specifically like the youth-oriented programs in the DYCD Workforce Connect system. So the biggest one that as Wayne mentioned, that everyone is very familiar with is the Summer Youth Employment Program, which is really one of our flagship programs. So I want to give you a little bit of an update because, as you know, this was a very unusual year in that, when we were getting ready for the summer, it was very unclear what we could do safely. Most people were working at home. Summer camps were not known if they were going to be open at all. That's like a major job. There were a lot of uncertainty about the safety of the workplace, the safety of young people, what was going to be going on with the coronavirus at that time. So we had to make the difficult decision to suspend the usual SYEP program. The normal SYEP program involves youth going out to work sites on a daily basis for a period of weeks in the summer. So this year, unfortunately, we weren't able to do that safely. So we were very quickly were able to put together a new program, which was known as Summer Bridge. And so the Summer Bridge program, which was for last summer, is really, we were able to do, it was a remote program. So the Summer Bridge program included the career readiness, both like discussions and online components. We used a program that was called Hats and Ladders, which was sort of an educational curriculum, and it also included project-based learning. So service learning, community service, learning about civic engagement. And so the projects that people worked on for their workplace challenge and for their project-based learning involved the census, environmental justice, media literacy. So that was sort of, we had to pivot and really change the program this summer. So this summer, we were able to serve over 35,000 youth, which, as everyone knows, unfortunately, that is not as high as we have been in previous years. But we were still really pleased that we were able to find something for 35,000 youth with our partners. Of those, 26,000 were in the older youth category. So that was 16 to 18. And the younger youth, the 14 and 15-year-olds, there were a little bit over 9,000. And this year, because of the sort of more limited scope of the program, we really did everything we could to prioritize youth in zip codes and in communities that were in a higher risk, specifically social, economic, and health indicators, and that had been hardest hit by COVID. So I did bring some of the information about Community Board 14. So in Community Board 14, there were two providers. That was CAMBA and the Council of Jewish Organizations of Flatbush, COJO. And they were able to, so those two organizations in those locations enrolled 4,475 youth. So obviously we can't say for sure where they all live, but I think it's a pretty good bet that they live, within the community board or, somewhat nearby. So, and I asked for a little bit of, just like a little bit of highlights from that program. And so the COJO group told us that, one of the things that they were the most proud of was that they, for their workplace challenge, they worked with the Maimonides Medical Center. And they hosted 40 youth who did an examination of the barriers that candidates face when they're trying to enter the healthcare industry. Specifically focused on diversity. So they were looking at the problems and coming up with solutions and, meeting with the staff there, all of it, remotely this summer. It seemed like it was a really positive experience, both for the participants and for the hospital and the volunteers there. So we were pleased with that. So the number overall, as I said, was a little over 35,000 citywide, and of those, 7,400 were in Brooklyn. So actually, your local providers were actually a pretty high number as compared to, I'm sorry, 12,000 for Brooklyn. That was the Bronx. 12,761 for Brooklyn. And of those, I said 4,475 from your local providers. Our total budget this summer was $51 million, which is lower than it usually is, but certainly enough to give a robust program. We are expecting all of our planning and all of the budgeting assumes that next summer we're going to be back up to SYEP the way it was previously. Our funding is there, and so we're really hoping that the situation will stabilize enough for us to be able to send youth out into the communities for in-person jobs next summer. So that is the big piece on SYEP. And I wanted to also mention one of our newer programs, which just rolled out last year. And, of course, had the unfortunate timing of starting a new program just as the pandemic was in the same year as the pandemic. It's called Advance and Earn. And Advance and Earn is a program, it's a new program because we were noticing that a lot of the people who needed the career workforce training were also the same people who needed some assistance educationally in terms of literacy and high school equivalency. And so the new program that was designed is called Advance and Earn. And it's for youth ages 16 to 24. And the idea is that it includes literacy and math skills, help with the high school equivalency test preparation, and also sort of industry recognized training, credentials, and certification. And it involves internship placement. So right now we're actually recruiting for the next cohort. It's an intensive program. It's a 6-month commitment. So these are much, smaller. This type of program tends to be much smaller. So if you go to, I can send over some flyers afterwards. But if you go to nyc.gov/advance, there's information on finding a provider. Right now, these programs are remote. So they are in every borough, but at this point, right, if someone is interested in working with a particular provider, it's certainly much easier to go to one who's not in your area. But the Brooklyn provider is OBT, Opportunities for a Better Tomorrow. And each of the programs has a different focus. So the OBT program has a focus on digital marketing. But if people, when they see on our website, there is someone that's focused more on healthcare or, something that's a more construction or technical oriented skill, they are also welcome to apply to that. So we really want to encourage, if basically, 16 to 24-year-olds who are basically, not in school, not working, who need assistance in the areas of both literacy and career development. And then the third piece that I will talk about briefly, because I know I'm going on a long time here, is our federally funded programs. So the city and DYCD got funding through the federal government through the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. We call it WIOA. It is often, I see you put up the link, great, thank you. It used to be known as WIA, the Workforce Investment Act, for those of you who have heard of it. So there's sort of 2 flagship programs, and those are also intensive programs. And in New York City, they're known as Train and Earn and Learn and Earn. If you've been around for a while, you may know them as out-of-school youth and in-school youth. We changed the names because their old names talked about who the population was and not about what the program was. So the Learn and Earn, which is the in-school youth program, is those tend to be paired with high schools. And those are aimed at juniors and seniors who are probably at risk of leaving school. The program that's a little bit larger, and I think more people know about, is the Train and Earn, which is OSY, formerly out of school youth. And so that's also youth up to age 24 who are not in school and not working. And that's it's very career focused, career exploration, although they do have assistance if there are credentials and things that you need to be able to get to that place. So again, those are borough wide, and they're intensive programs. So, they tend to be smaller. They have a long time follow up through the federal government. And so the WIOA in your area, there's a few. But the ones that, and you can find them all on our website, but the specifics, there's a Train and Earn, which is the out of school youth program that is local through the organization NYSARC, NYSARC. And I think it's a temporary location, so they may not always be in that specific office, but they are located right now in CB14. But regardless of where any of these are, they serve people borough-wide. They could potentially serve people not in the borough. And again, right now, they are all remote. The closest high school program, the Learn and Earn program, is at Abraham Lincoln High School. And so I know that's sort of in your bordering community district. So those are our main programs. Although you did mention, Work, Learn, and Grow. And Work, Learn, and Grow is an initiative through the City Council. And the idea was to develop more programs that would help youth work year round. Instead of just in the summer. It's a little more complicated because you have to work around business hours and school hours, unlike in the summer. And so we do operate the Work, Learn, and Grow program. This year, Work, Learn, and Grow has 2,000 slots allocated. And the program it starts up in the fall, in the late fall. So we don't have a lot of information about this year's program, but it is still something that we've continued. And it's also, in terms of the year-round programming, back to the SYEP, is that when we redesign the program, SYEP has components that are really based on different needs. So a certain amount of the slots we call community-based, and those are lottery slots for anyone. But there's also a very large chunk that are devoted to specific high needs groups. So some that are specifically for people living in NYCHA development, some that are specifically for youth involved in the justice system and the foster care system. So there's also a program through SYEP that we refer to as Career Ready is the name of it. And those are programs that are in partnership with schools. And so that way the program really wraps around the full year. Instead of just the summertime, those are jobs that are in organizations that are working with the same school throughout the year. So that's another way, at least, once we get back to our typical our previous world of SYEP, where work sites are safe and it's available. We also have the Career Ready option for during the school year, in addition to Work, Learn, and Grow. So that's our sort of quick overview. I know it's a lot of information. I'm happy to send more information. I'm happy to take questions. And thank you very much for listening and for being interested in your support of youth jobs, youth employment, and workforce development.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for that very comprehensive overview of the programs and how things are going to be flowing moving forward. If I just can recap a couple of things, and then I want to open it up to questions from and I'd like to do this in some order from my co-chair and members of the board, and then to members of the public who have joined. But I just want to recap a few things. So in specifically in CB14, our major providers are CAMBA and COJA, that's the Council of Jewish Organizations of Flatbush, correct? Okay, and you said that they provided opportunities for 4,475 youth this past summer, or was that this year?
That was the Summer Bridge program. That was
just the Summer Bridge.
Yes. All
right, and the other program you mentioned was Advance and Earn, which is the program for the 16 to 24-year-olds that are not in school and not working. You said that program is being administered in Brooklyn by Opportunities for a Better Tomorrow.
Yes.
And they're focusing on digital marketing.
That's right.
All right, but are there other programs that are covering other providers that cover other subject areas in Brooklyn, or is it just that?
So Advance and Earn is a fairly small program. Put a link to the whole page. So these are remote. So the other providers who are in other boroughs, so people are welcome to apply for those because they'll be doing it remotely. The in the Bronx is working on masonry and landscaping. There's a commercial driver's license certification with one of the Bronx providers. It has a program with a focus on culinary arts. Queens has a program with a focus on nursing, nurses' aides, and phlebotomy tech. And Staten Island, the organization, it says direct support professionals. So I think that's an office.
That's a pretty robust offering around the city.
Yeah.
And then just to touch on the other programs, the federal programs that you said are funded through the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act are Train and Earn and Learn and Earn. And those providers, at least for CB14, are NYSARC and Abraham Lincoln High School, respectively.
The Abraham Lincoln High School program is through the ACC of Coney Island.
Okay.
And there's a few other train and earns in Brooklyn, and those are all on our website. I just named the ones that were geographically the closest.
Okay. I mean, we'd love it if you could share those links with the board so that we can share that on our website and with our members. I'll open it up to questions. Jonathan, if you have any questions, then we'll move to other board members and then the public.
Can you all hear me?
Sorry.
Yeah? Okay. So first of all, Sarah, thank you so much for sharing that information with us and coming tonight to talk to all of us. Obviously, this is an unusual period of time we're in, and we've been working very closely with the young people in our district since 2008 when we started our first annual youth conference, where we had SYEP as sort of the anchor sort of tenet, if you will, of the event, anchor presenter. And we've had a lot of nonprofits and businesses come to provide lots of different kinds of job, internship, volunteer opportunities for the young people of our district and put it all in one place. And so, of course, this year, a lot of those plans that people got used to sort of got derailed. And I know one thing, I think this is great that some of the tweaks and innovation that have happened as a result of COVID and trying to adapt. So there's some programming. I think that's a great thing. I have two questions here with that statement. One is, what do the application deadlines look like? How many of the programs that you've mentioned, which I know are sort of repackaged versions of other programs that have existed in the past, but what are the application deadlines like so that we can play a better role in advertising it for those young people in our district, the teens and early 20-somethings that could benefit from those programs? And then two, what does the future of those programs look like now that so much virtual and remote interaction has sort of become a little bit a part of the culture, although like you said, it might go back to normal come next fiscal year. But I just wanted to get your insights on what are the application deadlines for these programs? How do you get into them? And how much of these programs are going to shift maybe going forward for good as a result, and what might that look like?
Sure. So I do want to clarify, the only substantially changed as a result of the pandemic is the SYEP with the temporary switch to Summer Bridge. Advance and Earn is a new program that had been in the pipeline unrelated to COVID. And the federal programs transitioned to remote, but they did not substantially change as programs. So it's really only Summer Bridge that we had to really rearrange. So right now, in terms of application deadlines, the Advance and Earn programs and the WIOA, the Train and Earn and Learn and Earn, those are programs that accept a few cohorts every year. So it's really an ongoing, there will be a deadline, but there's always another cohort coming up. Those are sort of year-round recruitment, and I can put some links I'll put some links in the chat box after my portion of the presentation is done so that you can see. And we send out email blasts periodically with information about DYCD programs and how to enroll in them and promoting them. So that's a good way to keep involved. I think it's a really to your sort of larger question about how, right, the remote programs are affecting us, I think we're learning a lot, and I think it's some really some new challenges, but also some positive developments. Specifically because I think some people are finding it easier to fit in their attendance because they're not traveling, they're not, they don't necessarily have to get childcare. If they have a child who's asleep in the other room, they can go and sign on. So they, some of those things are really have been helpful, but I think it's also, challenging to really develop the same level of rapport. We've seen in our programs, not specifically workforce, but just our literacy and our after school programs, we've seen in the beginning, some of them had a little bit of it was a difficult transition, but we offered a lot of technical support, a lot of professional development, where we offer to our providers, just sort of provider meetings, but ways to get them more familiar with technology. We give a lot of leeway to programs to come up with to use what works the best for them. So for example, our adult literacy programs found that a lot of programs they did some phone calls and teleconferences because that just seemed to be working better for some of the people, where others do much better on a video conference. So I think, I do think that it's something that's going to be changing going forward. I think, we haven't formally redesigned any programs, and we're going to have to sort of see how things develop, especially though, if there's a time period like the one that we're in, where I've seen the school system is in person, that the school system is remote. Our after school programs switch back and forth when that happens. When the school system's remote, our after school programs are remote. So I think we're probably going to be sort of seeing it develop, right? As maybe certain components will always be remote, or maybe they won't, right? But I think it's something we're keeping an eye on and trying to learn as much as we can from these changes.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. And I don't know if we're ready on that email list, but we definitely want to get on that one when all the information goes out regularly. So
sure, I'll put a link in the box so that anyone can click on it and sign up.
Even better. Thank you.
I do see a chat question that says, can you tell me what is available for 14-year-olds? So in terms of a workforce for 14-year-olds, that's our younger youth component for our summer youth employment program. So younger youth are able to, at that age, it's more project-based learning and stipends versus a wage and a specific job. But 14-year-olds are also not only eligible for the youth employment, but 14-year-olds are still in the category, many of them are in middle school. So our SONIC programs, which are middle school after school programs that are comprehensive, that involve enrichment activities and learning and youth leadership and a whole bunch of other things that we did talk about tonight. Those are available to 14-year-olds, as well as our community center programs, which are located, beacons are located in schools and cornerstones are located in NYC developments. So there's a lot of opportunities for 14-year-olds. The 14-year-olds are really kind of on the line though, right? Like most 14-year-olds are not working yet. We do think it's important to provide opportunities to introduce them to the world of work and to get them ready to do that. But certainly most of them are not equipped to have the skills to just, get up and running and walk into a workplace knowing exactly what they need to do. But we do have, specifically on the workforce side, it's the summer youth employment program, as well as our other youth development programs. So thank you for that question.
Thank you, Sarah. We do have a hand up, Anne Godet. Anne, you had a question?
Yeah, I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much, Dwayne. Sarah, thank you so much for your presentation. I just wanted to touch base and sort of follow up on two things. One is you mentioned that COJO had the bulk of their summer offerings for youth was through Maimonides in terms of mentorship and so forth, which was great. But I'm curious how Canva pivoted and positioned their programming. And the second thing was in the OBT category, the Opportunity for a Better Tomorrow. So there are different programs in the various boroughs. Can students apply outside of their boroughs? Thank you so much. I appreciate your answer.
Sure. So yes, they can apply outside their borough. for any of our programs. And in fact, now that they're remote, we might see a lot more of that. The difference, I think a lot of the times though, our providers are people who are very familiar with the community they work in, and that's something we want. So we also expect our providers to do their own recruitment. So that's also part of it. When they are recruiting, they tend to be recruiting from their local area, probably more than citywide, but we do see people, they're welcome to apply in other places. We even, for something like youth employment, for summer youth employment, we'll often see people applying, not this past summer, right? Because it was all remote, but in previous summers, you would see older youth who might want to work in Manhattan. We would maybe see youth who spend a lot of time in the summer with a relative, and they would apply for a placement that was near their relatives' home so that they could, if they were with their grandparent or something. So we do see that a lot. They are welcome. So I do, let me just pull up some of my info. So the Summer Bridge program, I don't have a huge amount specifically about how Canva specifically did it, because we did have a lot of programs, and that was sort of just one to highlight, but I do want to, let me pull up my page, and sorry if just to look at. So basically, in the programs, everyone was participating in, everyone used Hats and Ladders, which is this online curriculum, and everyone had project-based learning. So some of the options were STEAM enrichment. There was a program called Career Clue, with sustainability and technology. And again, this really depended on their ages. So the Maimonides program that I talked about was for the older youth. So I'm looking to see, some of our projects were designed by the providers, and some of them were designed, we gave them a library that they could choose from, we worked with the Youth Development Institute. So there was a program called, Career Clue, and then the Workplace Challenge is what I talked about with Maimonides. So I don't have specifics on what Canva did in terms of their Workplace Challenge, but everyone who was in the program was expected to do it was a project-based learning. It was also a job curriculum, and there's a big focus on, depending on the age, there's a focus on skills that you need in the workplace. Things like, some of it is things like coming in on time, but some of it is also information about financial literacy. This may be the first time many people have bank accounts. They're often, paid with debit cards in the traditional SYEP, and so it's no fee card. But for example, that's part of the curriculum. We have a standardized curriculum for areas that everyone needs to cover, and then the individual providers have some leeway in determining specifically that either in a traditional year the specific job placements, and this year the partners for the learning.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Anybody else have any questions? Sean, do you have any feedback from the board or ask of our guests?
Well, I'll throw in my thanks to Sarah, because she's always terrific and always so knowledgeable, and appreciate her availability and responsiveness. And just as a point of clarification, the mention of Canva and Kojo as main providers was specific to the Summer Bridge program. There are a number of community-based organizations that receive DYC funding to run DYCD programs in the district. I'm wondering, Sarah, as a follow-up, could you send me that list? We've received it from DYCD before, just a list of all of our CBOs getting funding and providing programs that are supported by you.
Sure. Yeah, I can generate a list of the programs and send that afterwards. Tonight I just have the list of the workforce programs, but we do have a list of all of our other providers. And so I guess I should make a little plug here, even though I'm eating into my other panelists' time, to mention the Learning Bridges program, which you may have heard about. It's not a workforce program. Learning Bridges is a program for youth who are in blended learning. So if they are in school some days and there are other days where they need a place to be, we have developed the Learning Bridges program in participation with, in partnership with the Department of Education. And so that's something that we're actually still actively recruiting providers for. So if you have local providers or local spaces that people, that could actually be used for childcare situations, we are still looking for organizations that are able to run those and to operate those. So that's definitely another piece. So when I send you the list, there may be some learning bridges on that list as well.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sarah. I don't see any other questions or any other hands raised. So in the interest of time, I want to progress the meeting forward. Sarah, again, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you, and we look forward to any information you can share with the board about DYC and its programs.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone.
So up next, we have Rachel Opatowski, I hope I'm saying that correctly, from the VISTA program of the Mayor's Office. And Rachel will be presenting on the Youth Leadership Council. So Rachel, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. So again, my name is Rachel Opatowski, and I am a VISTA member, but I work on Youth Leadership Council's programming. And tonight I'm here with my colleague, Kimberly Martinez, who will be co-presenting a little bit about Youth Leadership Councils and our Office of NYC Service and how we can best support your community board with what we offer in our programming. So I will begin to share my screen with you all shortly. Kimberly, why don't you introduce yourself?
Good. So hello, everyone. As Rachel said, my name is Kimberly Martinez, and I am the Outreach Specialist Vista with Youth Leadership Council. So I'm hoping, of course, provide a little bit more info of us, what we do, the supports that we offer to you all. So yeah, okay.
Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Yes, you can see it.
Great. So we're going to move forward with our presentation. So this is our typical info session PowerPoint deck that we share with interested nonprofits, schools, city agencies, community gardens, nature residents, NYPD precincts to talk a little bit about Youth Leadership Councils. Youth Leadership Councils is a program that emphasizes both youth and adult partnership. And for your community board specifically, in having that youth adult partnership, that can be reflected in multiple ways. It can be with participation within your community board. It can be receiving feedback from youth within their local community, and also helping develop projects and initiatives together. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Kim.
Okay. So again, just a bit on the kind of the. So we're gonna start off with NYC Service before we really touch on Youth Leadership Councils. And that really is to go on to the kind of the connection between YLC and YLC being the acronym for Youth Leadership Councils and NYC Service. So NYC Service, of course, started really in response to the president of the time, which was like Barack Obama, his call for volunteerism and service. So that really what started NYC Service, that civic engagement component, very important, and really ties into our mission. So the mission of NYC Service is building the partnerships to deepen and expanding civic engagement through volunteer and service program, creating sustainable change for our city's greatest needs. And the vision is being really that uniting New Yorkers in service to advance lifelong civic engagement for a more equitable and inclusive city. So as you see, like this is kind of that overall civic engagement. But I guess Rachel, if you could get to the next slide. But it's like even with YLC, it's like recognizing that there are gaps and what can we do to really work on those gaps and lessen them. So with that is also some of our values and beliefs, which is participation, diversity of inclusion, community, and collaboration. So being in our values is things that we really focus on participation, lifelong civic engagement, that it is the right, a privilege, and a responsibility of every New York City resident. diversity and inclusion, that all residents have value and live experiences central to finding solutions to community and city challenges. So trying to be as inclusive as possible, even if it's also accessibility, different things that sometimes we forget or don't include in some of our, maybe could be something simple as like your events program, or even in like the workforce as well. And then community volunteerism and service exists in many forms across NYC, and each are assets woven into the city's democracy. And I think that you could see with like volunteerism and service can even be, the AmeriCorps that is under, do programs under NYC Service, and me also being a Vista member, showing that, community importance and collaboration, just that the present and future of our city depends on residents working together across communities and sectors. So of course, wanting to this collaboration across all the the 5 boroughs of New York City. And Rachel, you could go next. And I guess like tying this into YLC is like, you may be like, okay, civic engagement and YLC service, but it's also then recognizing this gap with hearing our youth voices, and really started back in 2014 in just wanting to have the space for youth, for them to voice out or create actual change in organizations, if it's NYPD or if it's different places, giving them a voice. And so that's how our NYC YLCs started, and it has definitely branched out to all 5 boroughs. But it's going back to that civic engagement, that it's important no matter your age, your background. Everybody should, have that startup, be able to be civically engaged. So providing those opportunities is important. So with the youth leadership councils, is that NYC Service partners with city agencies, communities-based organizations, like even NYPD precincts, like I said, to just host these YLCs. And communities across across New York City, which really is like all 5 boroughs. So each YLC ties into a citywide network, working collectively to impact important local or topical issues and amplifying youth voice and civic opportunity. Like if you see even in our logo, youth voice counts. So that's really is going into kind of our essence, just that wanting to give youth more of that voice, a space, a platform for them to really be more involved in things that matter to them. And that's why with the different YLCs that we have, is definitely different focuses, but it's also going back into that partnership with youth. So, and what we as the youth leadership team provide is definitely support with all these councils, this wider network that, yes, maybe an organization may have their own YLC, but at the end of the day, they're part of this wider network. And us as the YLC team is being able to just provide that support, bring everybody together, if it's like through professional development, events, consultations, supports even with recruitment, and then any concerns or issues that maybe a council may be having, and even just help with since there's different focuses on projects, on like events that maybe the youth want to focus on, if there needs more guidance, a little an example maybe from a different council, that we definitely provide that. Yeah, and then I'm pretty sure you could go next. So the mission of YLC, so to ensure equitable access to transformative civic opportunity for all NYC high school youth. So yes, that if you see here, you see like high school youth. That is the preferred kind of the group, but we have been kind of flexible, and if it's a little below or after, is fine. The focus is more on high school programming. So it's like you don't so much have to be in high school. But again, it's really, we have been flexible with different organizations on that too, and of course all NYC youth. So we don't want it to be a hindrance that maybe if it's like in a different borough, maybe backgrounds that you may not be involved with this council, and we're working towards of course getting our word out more towards different areas, to definitely be more inclusive in that area, because we definitely believe that, you know, everybody should be able to be involved with this opportunity. So with the vision, it goes that every, you know, NYC high school student is equipped with the skills needed to build stronger communities in an inclusive city. You know, starting now, you know, opening, you know, to these opportunities. So with our values, I know on the slide you probably saw the youth and adult partnership already, but these are very like values are like our core things that we really want to emphasize and work on. So with youth and adult partnership, I'm just going to start there because this is really something that we always go back to because it's really pivotal to even like the success of the program, the councils, is that it is a youth and adult partnership. It's not you know, one is more above than the other. We don't want it to be like a hierarchy. We wanted to emphasize that it is a partnership. You know, just to really cultivate that positive, authentic relationship and, you know, building like intergenerational bridges and healthier communities that, you know, this is collaborative. This is something done together, not that one is, you know, more knowledgeable than the other, you know, of course, working together that and that is even throughout the project that if the focus is, you know, separating responsibilities and things like that. So youth and adult partnerships, not anything else. And then for our other values is justice and equity. Of course, you know, there's gaps and just working towards to, you know, eliminating those gaps and being more inclusive even within our own councils. So acknowledging there is, you know, this gap and that all youth should just be involved with it. And the systemic change is that just the power of youth voice and action to transform New York into a more fair and just city. So, you know, with getting more of these councils across different organizations so that youth voice are involved through, you know, all these different organizations, even you know, us as NYC Service, we have our own YLC, just so that it's incorporating, of course, that youth voice even with us. And then asset-based approach this is super important. It's like we want to focus on communities that their assets, the assets of the youth. Now, trying to be like, okay, what is lacking or what we think is lacking. No, focus more on what is the strength, the expertise, what is the youth bringing, and they have a lot to bring. So really using that to drive some change. And then lifelong development is just that it's investing in powerful civic opportunities that can really spark a lifetime engagement. You know, like what youth doing here could really start you never know, like their careers in the future or even being involved, like even things like registration, voter registration, which is important. And yeah, Rachel, you could go next. And if you didn't get the importance of youth and adult partnership, we actually have a whole slide on this just because it's really super important to us that, you know, this is an environment of mutual trust and respect that, you know, develop a joint partnership leading to knowledge building experiences. There's, like I said before, these shared roles and responsibilities that this is, of course, more like broken down. We actually provide a civic action guide. I could send this over also in the email, which breaks down ways to, you know, provide these, you know, the steps for mutual trust and what we do as the support. So yes, a collaborative decision-making process, and this could be even, you know, in the council as well, like how the decision being made. Goes back to the action guide as something to look at, and of course we're here to help with that process as well. That, you know, we just really want to emphasize that youth, you know, being the co-creators and, you know, developing topics oriented discussions for meetings. And really, like, again, neutral learning environment. Go ahead, Rachel. So I just wanted to take this moment very briefly, even if it's just one or two, or even if it's in the chat, it just goes back to this question. Like, what does youth voice mean to you and your organization? And if possible, even if it's in the chat, write down the answer to this. Or even voice it out. You could mute yourself. And if Rachel, if you want to kind of model it, feel free to do so.
Sure. So if anyone wants to participate and share what Youth Voice means to you and your organization, we would really appreciate that. Youth Voice that we find within our own Youth Leadership Council and within our network of youth groups around New York City is incredibly powerful. It's insightful, especially when topics address youth specifically, when they're at the forefront of the decisions, and they are the ones that are part of the conversation that will impact, not just them as youths, but others as well. So we find that Youth Voice is important. It's informative of our decisions. It's also representing our populations, and we do what we can through our Youth Leadership Council trainings, professional developments, to continue to foster and enhance that youth voice amongst both youth and adults that work in partnerships. If anyone else would love to share, we would love to hear your feedback.
Chairs, I see that Antoinette has a hand up, but I'm not sure if that's from before.
You're more than welcome to, if you have your hand up, to share.
Yeah. So it was actually from before, but you just sparked a question from me to you, actually. So to confirm or to better clarify, and thank you for your leadership bringing these programs forward for our review and understanding. So, but with your various youth leadership conferences within the different boroughs, is your goal to have youth and adults partner in identifying needs, and then under the matrix of the YLC, try to arrive at solutions, so you're solutions driven once the needs are identified? And I'm curious, in a real world situation, let's say there's a garden that needs setting up, or there's a fallow part of land. We don't happen to have a lot of unused land, but let's just say there was. Or if there's a food issue, how would those things under the auspices of your Youth Leadership Council be identified and then troubleshot and then brought toward action? Thank you very much.
No problem. And so to answer your first question, this is why we are here. We're here to provide tools and resources to help unite both youth and adults together, to make observations, to do research, and to implement action plans. That is our curriculum and program year trajectory. In terms of, do you mind repeating the second question?
So not at all, but it's more a step off from your what you just mentioned, which is what the YLC is. So are you? I'm not clear if YLC is divided per borough or per initiative. So I don't know how many youth leadership councils you have, and who they ultimately feed back to. But how needs within a community, because there are so many communities within communities, how those needs are identified, pairing together with willing adults and interested high school youth generally, and then how solutions would be arrived at, who are those invested partners, and then how does it become an actionable deliverable, so that the need is therefore it's identified, actions are created, and then it's brought forward to offer some relief or an outcome-driven process. Does that clarify?
Yes, and I think
Great.
the rest of our presentation will get more in depth with it to identify, to make observations, to identify a focus area to implement these action plans. Our Youth Leadership Council network this year consists of over 80 YLCs throughout New York City. They are located in different types of spaces, community-based organizations, nonprofits, schools, nature residencies, NYPD precincts, community gardens, health and hospital facilities, city agencies, just to name a few. And within those localized spaces, that is where the dynamic begins in identifying the issues to create change.
Yeah, and just to go is that if there's, I'm just gonna kind of define a host site, because essentially a host site will be kind of the, let's say for instance, I could even say us, the YLC team, we can be also considered as a host site since we have our own council, and which is more into kind of like with our, believe like 15 youth, and that's kind of the more like, okay, smaller version of the council. And with that is that we may have a focus area, but essentially the projects involved is very much like brought down to the youth, and even those steps and even those meetings is brought down to looking back to our guide, which is why we're emphasizing a lot this guide, because it goes into even the beginning steps of building that trust, which is very essential before jumping into anything. Building that trust that that youth know that this is something that we want to be collaborative, a partnership, and it's important that it's done in the beginning. And even something as much as small as, or even as important as community agreements from the jump. And for even with the topics and the more stuff, I don't want to get too in depth because it is kind of on the next slides. It just follows this model of how you go to each step and what you can do, and even example activities or different choices that can be done to kind of flesh out different projects to lead to what you said, like the action.
If I may interject, Kimberly, and it sounds like some of the questions may be answered if we get through the presentation. So just in the interest of time, if we just want to get through the presentation and have folks ask their questions afterwards.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you.
Kim, I can take it from here.
Sounds good.
Our program is rooted in policy, practice, and advocacy, and these are different avenues, and this can include all three, a combination of two, that a project focus is developed within your Youth Leadership Council. In closely identifying a focus, it can be rooted in policy, understanding the laws and governing concepts of the host site or organization, as well as the community in which they serve or provide, in suggesting or influencing change. In practice, reviewing the process of everyday work being done within the host site or organization, or around an issue impacting their community, and suggesting or influencing change. And advocacy is very straightforward, giving a voice to a cause, to raise awareness and influence others to improve the health and well-being of their community. And through these avenues, with our guide, additional supports, monthly professional development workshops and trainings offered for both of our youth and adult members, policy, practice, and advocacy can be achieved within the Youth Leadership Councils. We have 5 stages of a YLC. The first stage is investigation, and this is done through team building and building trust amongst the council, finding out the interests, skills, and talents of your Youth Leadership Council youth members, learning about community assets and needs, asking questions, conducting action research, and identifying that significant issue to address. Investigation leads to preparation. Once an investigation is established, the Youth Leadership Council works towards a solution by clarifying roles and responsibility, organizing a plan, building a timeline, using project management, and having youth gain skills to carry out the plan. Action is carrying out that plan through policy, practice, and/or advocacy. And through this entire program year experience, reflection is key, as well as demonstration, documenting the progress. Moving forward, these are some of the topics that Youth Leadership Councils focused on in our previous program year. And a program year follows the school calendar. It begins in August and ends in May. This is a diagram and how we forecast out the program year. We begin with team building. We encourage youth leadership councils to get through the investigation and preparation stage. This also builds into community research and planning. Oops, I apologize. Then we transition into taking action and creating change. And by May, within our program timeline, youth leadership councils from all around the city will have the opportunity to present the work and focus that they've developed all program year long in monthly or bi-weekly meetings with their youth leadership council. These are some of the supports that NYC Service offers to a host site. This is a process that takes a network, a team. And so we offer guidance and consultations for enhancing or establishing a youth leadership council. Our organization portfolio is diverse, and no youth leadership council is the same. So we support in that because we want to make sure that to achieve the civic engagement amongst young people and to make sure that young people have their voice is a success. As Kim mentioned, we have the Youth Civic Action Guide. This is something that we can distribute after our meeting today. And this is something that on a monthly basis, we're expanding our portfolio, personal development workshops to discuss chapters with. We have virtual networking events for both youth and adult facilitators, and monthly virtual trainings and workshops for both youth and adult participants. And at the end of the program year, which was mentioned in May, there's a certificate of recognition awarded upon completion. So the YLC program has transformed both youth and adults. Adult facilitators may not, by day-to-day work directly and engaging youth, but their confidence levels increased by 56% in supporting young people to better understand their strengths and challenges through the experience and supports. Adult facilitators' confidence levels increased by 40% through experience and supports when guiding the youth to carry out their yearly action plans. Civic engagement within young people is a theme that many different agencies and organizations are addressing. And we found that young people's confidence levels increased by 23% in knowing how to use their interests and skills in making a community better. We have also found from our data that the confidence levels of young people increased by 20% in seeing the value and importance of community participation. And we strive each and every year to increase those numbers. So at this point, we would love to open it up to questions from the board.
Thank you so much, ladies. And again, just in the interest of maintaining some order here, Jonathan, as co-chair, do you have any questions? Then we'd like to open it up to board members if they have questions.
Yeah, I mean, just to clarify, first of all, thank you again for the presentation. I think this is a fantastic initiative to really provide a process and a framework for engaging young people in a variety of different capacities and creating sort of like a patterns that could happen in an efficient, productive way. So I think that's kind of very much in line with the type of work that we trying to do with really just engaging young people, teens in particular, in our district, you know, again, through our youth conference that we hold each year. So my main question is this: when you help an organization interested in forming a youth leadership council, when you do that, is it normally when that organization says, hey, this is sort of the framework, like this is what the end product will be, that, or this will be sort of the, I don't know, I guess I'm going to say there's a project in mind, or there's a way in which this project occurs annually from like that August to May cycle you were talking about? And is that usually something that the organization figures out first when working with you to sort of go through the process of getting things in place? Or can an organization say, hey, we would like to have one, and then will you help us sort of guide the most efficient, guide us on the most efficient path toward kind of a project? So what usually happens first in that process?
We find that both possibilities have come up within our network. It's good to have a plan of or area of focus beforehand, but through our work with Youth Adult Partnership, it's important to have youth input within establishing that process, of course. But we do find that organizations come wanting to start a youth leadership council, not knowing how to organize it. And so we can jump in at step one.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. And then I guess just because it's pertinent to us, have any of the other YLCs and organizations done something like a youth conference, such that would a YLC be a wise use in terms of maybe giving sort of purview and putting together such an event like that? Has any of the end products been events which primarily serve themselves, like serve that, teenage, early 20-something demographic?
Yes, and we actually find a lot of young people specifically for that, for a focal project or throughout the program year of YLC hosting events. Some examples that I can provide for you right now is the DOE Office of Sustainability each year puts on a Youth Climate Summit. Their YLC members help coordinate it and also facilitate sections of it for both staff, administrators, and students. This summer, the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office, their YLC, put together a town hall that included representatives from the Borough President's Office, members of the NYPD, to have a discussion dialogue about current issues within the community. Events are something that is commonplace within our network. And when YLCs put together an event, we share that throughout the entire network for community support and youth and adult participation.
That's okay. Great. So there's a precedent for that, and just well, I guess one more question. Just I guess for procedural purposes. So if the cycle starts August to May, if we were to, let's say, work more closely with you and pursuing this, this is something we have a strong interest in doing. What does it look like how do we kick that off if we were to sort of engage with you that way to put this together? Like, what would the steps be, given that, I guess, the official program kickoff for the actual YLC wouldn't be until, let's say, August or so?
Well, we currently, go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, just gonna, I guess, then you can go, Rachel, please. So, yes, typically it is August to May, but we have been flexible, not only just because of COVID currently, but also in the past, because, for instance, our Green Thumb in the past their program year has been started at March to October. So it goes to show that it's not the set in stone, but it does typically follow that program year. But I know currently a lot of our YLC, of course, providing that support and being mindful that everything's going on, a lot of them are starting in January. So it's just also being mindful of everybody's capacity, the situation that's going on currently too.
We currently have info sessions available where we can answer more questions and connect on December 8th. And we have ongoing orientations once your organization enrolls as a host site that we can involve you with for workshops and trainings and further opportunities for support.
Mm-hmm. And just, let's say, even if you were to start later your YLC, that doesn't prevent you from attending these trainings. You're definitely would share these trainings even beforehand.
Okay, thank you. I'll pick it back to you.
Thank you, Jonathan. And just also, if I can ask, just as an alternative to a more structured format for your support to organizations, does the Youth Leadership Council, does YLC have a mechanism where, let's say we wanted to kind of get moving on this and start collecting names of students and possible youth that are interested? Are you guys able to then help the young people build out a framework if we're there as somewhat of a guide as to how we want them to engage with the board itself?
We can provide the consultations and strategic sessions of instruction. We can provide an observation, but within a Youth Leadership Council, it's the organization primarily engaging with the young people. But we do offer support within enhancing that and helping you along the way.
Okay, great. All right, with that, I'll open it up to questions from the board and then questions from the general public that are participating tonight.
I have a question. This is Nikki. Is it okay if I ask? I had my hand raised.
Sure.
First of all, thank you for the presentation, and hi, Dwayne and Jonathan. Thank you for leading a good meeting. I had two questions. The first one is kind of related to Dwayne's question, like, what is the experience of getting involved with this from a kid's perspective? Like, how do they find out about this? How do they end up with this specific host site? Is it like we recruit kids that would be interested and then they form a youth council? So just sort of speaking to it from the shoes of a young person, how do they find out about this opportunity? Because I think mostly you've talked more about from the administrative or host site perspective. So that's question number one. What is it like to get involved with one of these as a kid? And then my second question for the two speakers is, do you have an example that comes to mind of a youth leadership council where you were like, wow, that was great. That was really fulfilling for both the kids involved and for the host organization. And the
reason I'm asking that question is I actually work for a nonprofit that's a youth organization. We do like study abroad, and we have like super failed twice at getting young people involved at planning this conference about exchanges for young people. So, you know, it can be hard to do that, right? To get young members involved in a way that's really meaningful, both for them and for the adults, right? So again, just to recap, first question was, what is it like to be involved to get involved or find out about a youth leadership council as a kid? And the second one is, do you have an example of a really successful youth leadership council that comes to mind, and what made it really successful as a project?
Mm-hmm. I guess I'll touch on the first one. So for youth, how they kind of find out a little bit more. Of course, you know, there's our platforms, website, but we also have different like kind of advertisements, different things that we do. Even like I know, I think briefly, I think now it's off, but we had the bus ads, so in different stops all around the borough. We had our you know, kind of like saying like join the youth leadership council, and like even with the website, and also even with a QR code all across the different boroughs, recognizing that, you know, different access. And so that's like another way you find out. And you know, for some host sites who are looking for maybe aid in recruitment, there is this like site on that youth can apply to for that select site to join their council. So that's another way that youth can join. And sometimes it's even just reaching out. Let's say if it's YLC's on the Instagram, they sometimes ask us, and we kind of just direct them and to maybe a select spot through the application. And it generally comes down through this application, because some host site, also being mindful, they already have this group of youth already where they don't need that help in recruitment, for instance.
Additionally, with recruitment, we offer a professional development workshop where we discuss recruitment, how to elevate and enhance your recruitment process internally within your host site, externally, and how to stimulate peer-to-peer recruitment, having members help spread the word about your youth leadership council.
Mm-hmm. And we actually just had this training, I believe it was last Thursday.
A memorable story from last year about a youth leadership council. This was the Department of Buildings, YLC, was the completion of the program year in the youth presentations. In our program year, we were disrupted with the ongoing changes and adaptations needed because of COVID-19. We received a lot of feedback from the DOB YLC in sharing that youth continued to come to meetings. They adapted from the in-person meeting space to virtual, and they were able to complete their projects and give presentations on sustainability and building safety codes to members of leadership at the DOB. What was a really wonderful takeaway from this experience, especially it being a first year youth leadership council, was the youth feedback and input. There was the Department of Buildings will continue to be part of our network this year, but with the uncertainty of COVID, the agency had not yet made a decision. But young people during their presentations in follow-up shared that they would want to continue their youth leadership council even without the consent and approval of the DOB. It showed that community was made in that space, and that there's development and the opportunity to continue to grow and make change.
That's a great anecdote. And thank you for sharing that. So just, again, in the interest of time, we have one registered speaker for the night, or who's asked to present something from a young person. I thank you both ladies, Rachel and Kimberly, for being able to present tonight to us. We hope that you would be open to following up with the board with some of the information you offered here tonight that wasn't in the presentation. Again, thank you. With that, I'd like to open the floor to Mr. Olamide Faramiro, I believe it is. And you can let me know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Olamido, again, because time is a constraint, I can allow you 2 minutes tonight.
Okay.
I understand you're working on a school project and have a question, and you have a deadline to meet, so I can allow you for 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes maximum. But then we've got to close out our meeting.
Can everyone, please?
Can everyone hear Olamide?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
My name is Olamide Fedemiro. I'm a graduate student from the City University of New York. I'm here to advocate on the resolution condemning the Trump's administration for the cut of people enrolled in food stamp for more than 3 million people. So I would like to know which ones. I'll just go straight to the point. We all know what the food stamp does. Is the first defense that the federal government has put in place for hunger, in which it allows for the provision of food to families with low incomes and need financial assistance. So my advocacy is basically on the resolution for the condemning, because when the president passed a bill to cut this benefit or program in people, it's ultimately you live in countless people, a lot of people hungry in the country. And now when you have speaking of living in Brooklyn, to precise, where there's little or no jobs, you're supposed to say New York is a dream, or where you come in, you get the American dream and you're supposed to get a job, but mostly there's not a job for everyone, and most families have to benefit off these benefits. Now, once you cut that off, you live in so many countless of kids hungry and everything. I would like to talk more about this because, like I said, there's so many stakeholders to this, but because of time and everything, I will just keep it this short. And if anyone has a question, you could just, email me or anything. I'm going to drop my email right there and everything, because there's a lot more I want to talk about, but because of time, and I don't want to take everyone's time. That's it.
Well, thank you very much for that, Olamide. Please do share your email address if anyone has any questions around this particular policy. Olamide, if you can also drop the information on the policy itself that you're asking people to consider, please do so. And folks are free to contact Olamide directly with their opinions around that. I do want to, before Jonathan, if it's okay with you, before we close out for the evening, I see here that we were joined by Detective Kim Walker of the 70th Precinct, one of our amazing community affairs officers. So I just wanted to acknowledge you, Kim.
Hello, everybody. I'm glad you joined us. Yeah, this was a lot of good information that I'm going to pass on to my YCOs, our Youth Coordination Office. So we get this running, we will be a part of it. So good job doing it.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you being able to join. We know it's really busy out there for you guys. So
thank you.
So unless anyone has any other business, I would like to make a motion for us to adjourn this. Oh, wait, one other piece of business. Nikki, if you can see it, and that beautiful little baby there, who has way more hair than me. I'm jealous of that. But congratulations, by the way, Nikki. But with that, I would like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting. Anyone want to second that? All right. So this meeting of the Youth Service Committee is adjourned at 7:56 p.m. Good night, everyone, and we will see you at the next general board meeting in December.
Good night.
Bye.
Thanksgiving. Bye-bye.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Take pictures.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Good night.
Night, everybody.